Editor Danny Eberhard reports.
Multiple excerpts of video footage on social media show a fire and a plume of smoke said to be near Yevpatoria. A source in Ukrainian intelligence has told the BBC that a Russian air defence system was destroyed. Russia's Ministry of Defence and local Russian-appointed officials have not commented on any damage. The ministry spoke only of shooting down aerial drones and claimed to have thwarted a separate attack on a naval patrol ship by destroying maritime drones. Ukraine appears to be stepping up attacks on occupying forces in Crimea. It comes a day after a major strike on the port of Sevastopol, the headquarters of Russia's Black Sea Fleet.
North Korean state media say the Russian President Vladimir Putin has accepted an invitation to visit Pyongyang from its leader Kim Jong-un, following his own trip to Russia on Wednesday. The Kremlin has not confirmed the plan. Following their meeting, Mr. Putin hinted at possible military cooperation between the two countries. Vietnam has ordered nationwide fire safety checks on small apartment blocks following the deaths of 56 people in a blaze in Hanoi. More from our Asia-Pacific regional editor, Celia Hatton.
Hanoi's firefighters say that once they reached the 10-story building that caught fire on Tuesday, it only took them an hour to get the flames under control. But accessing the fire had been a serious challenge in itself. Emergency vehicles were unable to drive down the area's narrow alleyways. The building's only exit was blocked by the blaze, so some of the survivors held their small children and jumped onto neighboring apartments.
World News from the BBC. Elon Musk has said a meeting in Washington of technology leaders and politicians revealed an overwhelming consensus for regulation of artificial intelligence. The boss of X and Tesla joined Meta's Mark Zuckerberg and the Google chief Sundar Pichai to discuss with US senators how to control AI. The United States is seeking ways to ensure the safe use of the rapidly developing technology, which can perform cognitive functions usually associated with the human mind. A team from the International Monetary Fund is due in Sri Lanka later for its first review of a $3 billion emergency loan programme. The IMF officials will look at steps taken by the government to improve its economy as part of a 4-year programme. The family of a Colombian man who died in an immigration facility in the UK earlier this year have told the BBC they believe he took his own life. Frank Ospina was detained during a raid after taking a catering job and died within a month of being put in a removal centre. Police in Spain have arrested a man on suspicion of sexual assault after he appeared to touch a female reporter's bottom during a live TV broadcast. The journalist, Isa Balado, was on camera in a Madrid street when the passerby approached and reached his hand out to her behind. Guy Hedgecoe has this report.
The man who had appeared to touch the reporter remained standing next to her. The studio anchor of the news programme being broadcast interrupted the live report and asked for the camera to focus on him. Police have arrested the man on suspicion of sexual assault, and prosecutors have asked for a restraining order to be issued to keep him away from the journalist. This has happened against the backdrop of a debate on sexist behaviour triggered by Luis Rubiales, the former head of the National Football Federation, who was forced to resign after kissing a female player on the lips after the World Cup final.
Guy Hedgecoe reporting. That's the latest. BBC News.
So last week, I spent the week learning how not to get killed. I was on a BBC journalist's training course, which covers many kinds of death to swerve, from bombings and bullets to heat stroke and road traffic collisions. It also taught me how to prevent my colleagues from dying, and now I'm pretty good at applying a tourniquet to a horribly realistic bleeding leg stump. I'm certainly no war correspondent, but, as our instructor pointed out, hostile environments aren't just political ones. As this planet heats up, places change, and so does the traditional knowledge about how to safely operate in those places. We're learning how to tread on thin ice. I'm Marnie Chesterton from the BBC World Service. This is Unexpected Elements. And as usual, there's an Unexpected Elements team to join me. Joining me from Helsinki is Tristan Artone, editor-at-large of Grist, the climate magazine.
Now, there are fears that 20,000 people may have died in the port city that's worst hit by the devastating flooding in Libya. The mayor of Derna says districts nearby have been entirely wiped out as the country's government warned the sea is constantly bringing in new bodies. Our international correspondent Alex Rossi has this latest report.
What happened here is for most Libyans still beyond comprehension. Before the flood, tens of thousands of people lived along Wadi Derna. But look at it now. Entire communities washed away into the sea when the river burst its banks. And this catastrophe was made far worse after 2 dams above the city failed, unleashing torrents of raging water. The survivors here have lost everything and everyone.
This is a disaster. My sister, her sons, her daughter and granddaughter. A total of 11. Disaster, disaster, disaster in every sense of the word.
And everywhere you turn, there is devastation. Cars tumbled away by the floodwater. Satellite imagery shows the extent of this disaster. Images from before Cyclone Daniel hit land show what the city once was. But those taken afterwards reveal the impact. Where there were homes, there's now nothing. Those still inside the city say much of it is cut off, and even basic communication is almost impossible.
Other disaster, the city is split to 2 sides. And to go to the other side yesterday, I drove to my brother's. I took nearly 100 miles to get to to go around, to go to them, which they are. I can see literally from my eyes to go, but that mountain and that water, that mud is between us.
Rescue workers are combing the area for survivors, but in most places they find no one alive. This is grim and difficult work, and it could take weeks to recover all of the bodies. It is expected the number of dead will rise considerably. In this building, they pull out from underneath the rubble the body of a young boy. He's wrapped in a blanket. Below, his traumatized father is waiting. Aid agencies say many of the victims here were just children.
The number of missing is a bit of the tricky part, where it's still, as of 2 days ago, was 10,000, but then of course it changes. So the scale is very big. Then there was 90,000 people, 30% are children. We're very concerned of the situation.
This disaster has been compounded by years of political instability and civil war. An international aid effort is getting underway, but with roads cut and bridges destroyed, it could take days before help reaches the people who need it most. Alex Rossi, Sky News.
Well, coming up at 10:30, we'll be live in the House of Commons as the government takes an urgent question about the situation in Libya. We'll bring you that live, and we're also joined by a guest from the International Rescue Committee later this hour. Now, the father, stepmother and uncle of 10-year-old Starr Sharif, who was found dead at her home last month, are to be questioned by police in the UK today. They were detained by officers who boarded their plane at Gatwick Airport last night as the 3 returned from Pakistan. Let's get out to our Milena Veselinovic, who's outside Guildford Police Station, where they're being held. And Milena, they're in custody, but were they arrested?
Yes, they were arrested last night when they landed at Gatwick Airport from Pakistan via Dubai, and the moment they were arrested, the clock started ticking in terms of how long the police have to question them before they can either charge them or release them. Usually that's 24 hours, but in case of serious crimes like murder, that can be extended to 36 to 96 hours. So there is a sense of urgency to talk to these individuals that the police police have been wanting to talk to since Sarah Sharif's body was discovered on the 10th of August, but individuals who basically went into hiding in Pakistan. Now, there was a video that emerged last week in which Sarah Sharif's stepmother said that what happened to the 10-year-old was an incident, but now, after more than a month, officers here will want to hear a detailed account from these three people about what they say happened to the little girl. But they're not coming to it cold because they have had some time to form a background picture, to speak to neighbours, to look at the CCTV, to, if you would like, know what they're looking for in their conversations with these three relatives of Sarah Sharif. And it was her father that triggered the police to look for Sarah Sharif by calling emergency services from Pakistan. And now that they're back here in the UK, the police will want to determine exactly what it is that happened to this 10-year-old girl.
Thank you so much. Now, the number of people in England waiting to start routine hospital treatment has hit a record high. New stats out in the last hour say an estimated 7.68 million people were waiting to start treatment at the end of July. That's up from 7.57 million in June. This marks the 8th consecutive month of increases to the waiting list, while the number of people enduring waits of more than 2 years has fallen slightly. The number who have been waiting over 18 months has risen slightly to 7,289. Well, our health correspondent Archie Joshi joins me now. Archie, a record high. I guess numbers were already incredibly high on this regard. The questions from here are whether the corner can be turned in any short or medium time frame.
Not while industrial action continues with junior doctors and consultants. The consecutive rise is to be expected. The government will say that although bringing down waiting lists is one of its key pledges, it can't do that. Rishi Sunak is on the record as saying he can't do that while junior doctors and consultants continue to strike. We've had 800,000 more appointments added to that 7.6 million list of people waiting to be seen in the last 8 months since the industrial action first began with the nurses, and then that was resolved by the government, and then we saw the junior doctors and consultants going out on strike. And while that happens, tens of thousands of appointments are lost every strike day. That puts hospitals back, and it's hard for them to start making serious gains and recovering some of those waiting times. So that's a really difficult challenge for hospitals. Next week we'll see the junior doctors and consultants striking together for the first time. While that continues, and they're both mandated to last throughout the winter and into the early months of spring, and until there is a resolution in that, the hospitals and the trusts really can't plan for anything long term. The government needs to resolve the industrial action first. But yes, this has been an exceptionally busy summer, one of the busiest summers on record. We hear NHS leaders telling us all the time now there isn't this break between the summer and the winter. It's busy all year round in the NHS. Traditionally, the winter months were the hardest, with summer having a bit of a reprieve where the NHS trusts would gather themselves and get themselves ready for that difficult winter ahead. But now we have a difficult summer followed by a difficult winter, so it's pressure all year round. There have been some gains within cancer waiting times. Some of the long-term waits have come down a little, but that key figure, the 7.68 million people waiting for elective or routine surgery or procedures, continues to grow, and that will put more pressure on Rishi Sunak, because that means he is not meeting one of his key pledges.
Ashish, thanks so much. Time for some of the day's other news now. The brand of collapsed retailer Wilko is to live on, and some job losses have been prevented after a deal was struck with administrators. Rival discount chain The Range has agreed to buy the Wilko brand, its website, and will retain the company's digital trading team. Scotland Yard has apologised and paid substantial damages to 2 women arrested during a vigil for Sarah Everard. Patsy Stevenson and Dania Al-Obeid were detained at the event for the 33-year-old who was kidnapped, raped and murdered by a serving Met police.